Hi everybody. Last year I did a video on how to make an irrigation system using PVC piping. This year I enlarged the garden and I want to show you another way you can set up an irrigation system that's completely different. The PVC irrigation system that I made last year worked great. However, this year I roughly doubled the size of this garden. So now it's about 500 square feet and each row is about 50 feet long. And when you're using a PVC system like that, as you go down the row, you will have less and less pressure, which means the plants near the end of the run will not get as much water as the plants closer to the water source. So this year, we're going to make a different system that is going to give us much more control and allow us to make sure that the plants get exactly the amount of water that I want them to get. Before we get started, let's just go over all the things that you're going to need for this, because there's a long list of materials that you want to have on hand when you get started. For starters, you're going to need 1/2-inch poly tubing. This is the same kind of stuff that you would use underground for your lawn sprinklers. Little tip, if you keep them in the sun, they'll get much softer and they'll be much easier to work with and uncoil. So keep that in mind. So I know there's a lot of stuff here, so just so you know, I will list everything in the description and I'll even put links there if you want to check them out. Most of the stuff was bought on Amazon. You're going to need a whole bunch of garden stakes. These are going to keep the poly tubing in position once the whole system is in place. These are drippers. Now, I chose drippers that will give a 1/2 gallon of water per hour to a plant. They do sell different drippers that give you different flow rates. So you can even go up to 2 gallons an hour depending what kind of plants you have. So keep that in mind and, make a conscious decision about which ones you want. These are adjustable drippers, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be using them in this video, but basically if you wanted to change the flow rate, you can just simply adjust it by twisting this and you'd be able to adjust it kind of like a faucet. You're going to need a whole bunch of these connectors. Now this is a variety pack. There's a whole bunch of different styles here. This will allow you to maneuver and make sure that you can get to all your plants with your poly tubing. These are also end caps, so this allows you to fold over the end of a run and no water will come out the back side of these things. You may or may not need 1/4-inch poly tubing, or sometimes you can get this in vinyl. They're just pretty much the same thing. This will allow you to install a dripper onto a narrow hose like this and allow you the flexibility to maybe go to a plant that is just like out of line with everything else. So you may want to consider this depending on what your garden looks like. If you're using the 1/4-inch tubing, these are stakes that the tubing snaps into and allows you to put them into position that we don't move. So you may want to consider these as well. If you're going to use the 1/4-inch tubing, you're going to need these connectors. So you're going to install these into a main line or one of those runs down your row, and then install the small hose, the 1/4-inch hose, to the other end. Okay, that's how you supply water to it. So as far as the water connection goes, keep in mind that these drippers can only handle a certain amount of pressure in the line, and if you go above that pressure, they will be damaged. So this is a water pressure regulator. It basically acts as a valve to reduce the water to 25 psi. This is what I'm going to be installing before any water gets to my irrigation system. This is an inline water filter, and if you open this, you'll see that there's a filter here. So this is just something to kind of hopefully safeguard against larger debris getting into your system and then creating problems with your drippers, and then you have to need to replace them. This is going to allow me to connect my hose to the 1/2-inch poly tubing that we have. Otherwise, there would be no way to make that connection. Now, last but definitely not least, I think this is essential. This is a hole puncher for the poly tubing. This punches the perfect size hole, so that way you can pop in your drippers without any leaking. This was about 10 bucks. So if that's not an issue for you, definitely get one of these because it'll save you some time and probably mistakes as well. I'm also going to be using a Wi-Fi water timer, which I haven't received yet, and I really don't want to get too into it because I don't know if it's any good. So I'll link it in the description if you want to check it out, and I will do a review on it when I have more experience using it, and hopefully it's good. And if it's not, I'll let you know. To start the installation, I'm going to cut our poly tubing lines down to length for the rows, which for mine is roughly 50 feet, with a little excess. Now I'm constructing the main line, and the main line is going to have a bunch of T's in there, so that way I can attach the hoses that are going to water each of the rows. For this garden, I'm using the same 1/2-inch poly for the main line as I am for the rows. If your rows have more drippers and you're going to be using more water per hour, you might need a thicker main line that will supply more water. So you might want to go up to 3/4 of an inch or an inch, depending on the size of your garden. Next, I'm going to be staking all of these hoses into position. That way, when I do punch my holes, they'll be in the right spot. We are ready to install our drippers, but to do that, we're going to have to punch holes into our poly tubing. Now, we talked about this tool briefly before. All it does, it's like a hole puncher. You just squeeze and it punches holes. And let me show you how this works. So, you just put your tube in here. There's a hole, you take your dripper and you just push it in. And there it is. And that's all we're doing. So we're going to go up and down the rows, punching holes into the right position and popping in these drippers, and hopefully everything will work as we expect it to. So I am going to run one of these 1/4-inch lines from the garden to this pot here where I have some basil, so I can show you how those other emitters work. To set this up, we have 2 open ends. On one open end, we're going to use this barb connector here, and on the other, we're going to use this dripper here, which allows me to control the flow rate. To make it possible to connect our water supply, you're going to need some kind of an adapter so we can hook up a hose to it. Now this is pretty simple because all you have to do is just push it in, and it should go right in there. Sorry for the noise in the background, that's my air conditioner. I want to explain how you make your connection to your water source. So this is the water pressure reducer, and you would just attach it to your main over here. And then this is the filter we talked about before, and you would attach the filter right after it. And then you would attach your hose here. However, I'm not going to be doing it this way because this hose, I use it for a lot of different things, so I'm constantly connecting it and disconnecting it, and I don't want to reduce my water pressure every time I'm using it for something else. So I am going to connect it directly to my irrigation system. But this is how you would normally do this. Instead of hooking this up directly where my water supply is, I'm going to hook it up here because I'm going to be disconnecting my hose frequently because I use it for other things back here. So, just going to make this connection. Okay. And we are set, at least with that part. This is optional, but I'm adding one of these because that way I can shut off the water from this connection here rather than having to go all the way back to the side of my house. Now we're not done yet. We're going to need to cap off the ends of each of our runs, but before we do that, I would recommend to flush out all of these lines because we use the hole puncher and there might be some pieces in there and it might end up blocking some of these emitters, the drippers that we installed earlier. Now once you get ready, once you do that, you're going to want to close this thing up. Now to cap these off, you're going to need something like this. This came with those tees that I was using earlier as part of the kit. And all you need to do is just slide it on and push it down enough where you have some excess here. Then you want to fold over the end here, just a little bit more. And you're going to slide it back up over this folded over piece here. And there you go. No water is going to come through there. If you are planning on doing something like this, I did list and link all the things that I used down in the description so you can check that out. We are in the middle of a heat wave here in New York and I am happy to say that this project is finished. If you are new to the channel and you like building stuff, check out some of my other videos, and if you like those, please think about subscribing. If you like this video, please hit that like button. It really does help get my video out there to more people. If you are on Instagram, check me out at Artisan Made Things. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.